Welcome to the 8th episode of the Handmade with Heart podcast. On today's episode, I interview Erica from Woodland Awakening. We talk about tips for being an introverted small business owner, putting together a newsletter, and how to take time out for yourself when running a small business. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Handmade with Heart podcast. I'm your host, Dana, and I own the small business Scrappy Stitch. Have you ever wanted to know more about some of your favorite small businesses? Follow along as I interview other creative small business owners. We'll talk about getting started, what an average day for a creator is like, tips and tricks, and of course, everything is handmade with heart. Hey, Erica, welcome to the podcast.
Hey.
So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us how you got started?
My name is Erica Woodland, and my company is Woodland Awakening. And it's a combination of yoga, meditation, drum journey, like events and classes, along with I also handcraft Reiki-infused crystal jewelry, holistic accessories like lavender pillows, handmade journals, original mandala artwork, all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of like a fusion of all my different skills and talents into one business.
Nice. Very cool. I read on your website that your ancestry has played a big part in your small business. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I'm a mix of like 9 different things, but as a child, like as long as I can remember, like looking back, I've always identified with my Syrian heritage and my Native American heritage, which is like Blackfoot and Cherokee. So even as a child, like I was always just more fascinated with the downtrodden part of my heritage. I don't know. So I had gotten into yoga years ago for kind of like a mental health practice, not necessarily the physical, but just kind of seeking something to like ground and just help me out in life. And through that, I was able to find a friend who became my teacher in some Native American teachings. So for like drumming and journeying and pretty much just like earth medicine, reconnecting to the earth. Like when I look back, even as a child, I just remember the times where I feel most at peace or that I felt seen or myself was always in nature. And that's what a lot of the Native American background comes into play. I was literally just at my friend's. We had like a girls' day yesterday, and I've known them since I was in first grade. And their mom had given them these things that we had done. And there was like poetry that we wrote when we were in junior high. And my 2 poems were Forest about like a gray wolf and moonbeams about how like the sun and the moon like shift. And I'm like, this is just what I've been doing my whole life. And when you're a kid, as you get older, if you're like a stranger kid, like those things get like repressed. And so it's just interesting that I've like circled back to them in life, and they've always been something that was healing to me. And then, got the world kind of like pushes you down, and then you kind of come back to those things. So yeah, that's kind of where all that stuff came from. And just like honoring the crystals and where they come from, and understanding about, feather use. I don't sell things with feathers. One, it's illegal unless you purchase them from feather vendors that take them from animals that people are eating. But like if you pick up feathers on the ground, you're not really supposed to keep them legally.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a whole thing from way back in the day when they used to make hats and things with feathers in them. The law couldn't govern if people were going out and just killing animals for their feathers, or if they were found. So since there's no way to like regulate that, like legally, you can't sell things with feathers, and just honoring that with the heritage, right? So like there's a lot of cultural appropriation right now with everything, but especially Native American culture, and giving native lands back, and just honoring that when I do offer journeys and things like that. I don't call myself a shaman. I'm not a shaman. I host drum journeys in a safe space where I honor the heritage and allow people to kind of discover for themselves what's going on. So that's kind of where all of that has come from and has led me to.
Very cool. I see on your website you make mantra bracelets. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And do you have a favorite mantra?
Sure. So the mantra bracelets are one of my favorite things to make. I actually chop up old aluminum trays and hand form and hand stamp them. And they're really lightweight and fun. And you can get like whatever mantra you want. Typically mantras, if you're using the word mantra, they're like Hindu mantras that are a little bit longer, have specific meanings that are linked to specific deities. But you could also use mantra just as any word or phrase or intention that you want to work with repeatedly in your mind to help you retrain your mind, because we can change neuroplasticity in our minds. We can rewire habits and thoughts and beliefs by repetition. So currently the mantra that I'm working with is I am worthy and strong. I needed
like
some
that.
power to kind of work through what's going on in the world right now. So right now I'm working with I'm worthy and strong. My favorite Hindu mantra is of Ganesha, which is the elephant deity that you've probably seen. And Ganesha is the remover of obstacles, and he also brings new beginnings. And that mantra is quite a mouthful. My husband, he would think I was saying banana when I was back here chanting, because usually with mantra practice, you're chanting the mantra or repeating it in your mind 108 times. And the mantra for Ganesha is Om Gam Gana Pataye Namaha. And that is a mantra that I've worked with since I got into that practice, and that returns to me because you can always use new beginnings and change. And so that's that. So everyone can have their own mantra. Do you have a mantra?
I don't actually. I should look into it. You can help me figure one out.
We can maybe set one later in our practice today.
Yeah. You also sell Reiki infused jewelry. Can you explain what Reiki is for those of us who don't know? Because I've heard about it before, but I really don't know very much about it at all.
Sure. So Reiki is Rei, R-E-I, means universal, and Ki, K-I, means energy. So Reiki is just the universal energy that is present in all beings in all life. So what I always like to do for people, because I'm not the best with words explaining some of these more out of the box concepts to people. A lot of people think that Reiki is of the devil, which is not true. It's all energy. So the exercise I like to give to people is to close your eyes and to bring your palms as close as you can to each other. So let's try it. So just close your eyes, let your palms face each other, and bring them as close as you can without touching. Okay. And just close your eyes and focus on that space between the palms. And then slowly start to draw your hands away from each other. Still focusing on that energy between the hands, that space between the hands, and then start to bring the hands closer together. And then just for a few moments, just bring the hands further apart and together and feel that space between. And that's kind of what Reiki is. It's like a little buzzing in the fingertips. It's like a little invisible bubble that you can feel, like that resistance when you're pressing your hands towards each other. Do you feel it? You can open your eyes. You can let your hands down. So with Reiki, you become attuned. There's 3 levels of attunement. There's a level 1, a level 2, a master, and a master teacher. Master teacher basically means that then you can go on to attune other people to Reiki. Once you're attuned, you get tools through those classes, just like any other class, a business class. You get tools in your toolbox to then be able to channel Reiki energy to yourself. A lot of Reiki is with people, right? So medically, in a lot of hospitals, Reiki has been implemented. There has been studies about Reiki and the healing process mentally and physically in the medical world, as well as without. I personally use Reiki just as like a self-healing practice. I also use it with the jewelry and the crystals, just by offering the intention and infusing Reiki into every item I make. As I'm making it, the intention is to fill it with Reiki so that whoever needs to find this piece of jewelry or product, that they will find it and that it will serve them to their highest good for whatever goals they wish to use it for. So it's all around us. Reiki is all around us, and it can be channeled to people. I personally am certified to do Reiki for animals, which is where I really love. Animals live in that space of energy. Animals are attuned. They are empaths. They live in that space and are highly receptive to Reiki. My dog has a couple autoimmune diseases, and we've had some very scary things and some relapses over the years. And Reiki has just become such an integral part of his healing and my healing. It helps me feel like I could do something for him. They can tell you what's going on. You can do Reiki over distance. Like I could be sending you Reiki right now, like through the interweb. You can use Reiki to help cut energetic cords that you have to negative relationships. Again, this is all belief. So if like I believe that, if I'm in a negative relationship and we no longer have that relationship, there are still things that tie you energetically to those people, those instances, memories. We hold trauma in the body, and Reiki can help clear those blocks and just help you find ease and balance. I do a meditation when I go to craft events. I set up my table and I usually stand in front of or behind it. And sometimes when I'm in my car before I get there, if I know where my spot's going to be from the map, I'll just visualize my spot. And if I have fellow vendors around me that I know, like, Sam or you, I'll visualize them as well. And in my mind, I just create a waterfall of energy that flows out and around my bubble. And I say to myself, I'm going to shine my light so that those that need to find me will find me. I'm going to shine my light so that those who need to find me will find me. And I protect my energy in this space so that those who do not, do not. And it's amazing, like the times that I've done that and I've had people come up and pick a stone and I tell them the meaning. And I've had people cry at my booth because they're like, I just needed that. Like people, they'll come up and be like, well, what does every stone mean? And I say, might sound a little woo woo, but close your eyes, take a deep breath, open your eyes. What are you most drawn to? And 9 times out of 10, when I tell them the meaning of the stone, it resonates with them. And that is what they end up going with.
Yeah.
I believe it. It works for me. It just helps align my energy and keep as an empath and an introvert, like I'm very conscious of my energy, where it goes and what's coming in and what I take on. And Reiki is just a way to create protection for myself and help animals and help other through infusing it in my craft.
Very cool. You mentioned being an introvert.
Oh, yeah.
And I am too, which I think surprises a lot of people because I can be very talkative, but being talkative is different than being an introvert, right?
Exactly.
Like it's interesting going to these events and meeting different people. Like I feel like we found our little community,
Yes.
but being introverted and running a small business can be a little tricky because it can be hard to get out there. Do you have any tips for anyone who might be introverted?
Yeah. So embrace it. Number one, it's always like, well, why aren't you more out there? Like, we're not going to like crazy extrovert people and be like, why aren't you more reserved?
Right.
It's just the world we live in.
Right.
And I'm the same way. I can be on when I need to be on, but then I'm drained and I need to go home and have a bath and put my legs up. For me, what I found is one, to honor that that's who I am and that I don't have to please everybody and that I don't have to entertain every interaction that comes to my booth. Not everybody that comes to your table is a customer. One thing for me is that I don't have to say yes to everything. I don't have to overbook myself for shows. I personally don't like doing double day events. I don't like doing full weekends. I know that you do. I hate it. I hate it. It's too much. By the end of a 2-day event, like I literally need like 3 days, like nobody talk to me. Like I just need to like recharge. So that is one big advice I'd have for introverts is like find the shows that feel the best for you and commit to them, but don't just take on events because they said that you're in. Doesn't always mean that it's the best for you, because if you're like, oh my God, I don't have any shows in December, like I have to take one every week of December that shows up. I mean, December, yeah, maybe, because it is the big rush, but you have to gauge your ability too. Cause like taking on all of those things, are you really going to be like your best self towards the end of that like second day? Probably not. Protecting your energy and setting boundaries, I think, is huge as an introvert. And then just understanding that like people are people and they can be rude and they can be overwhelming. And you just have to like take care of yourself in the long run. I'm very good when I'm in person creating community, like for events or for like my meditation events and when I have yoga classes and even for like craft shows. And that is where like I kind of put that extroverted energy. And then I allow like my introverted self to thrive when I'm home, because, if you're introverted and you take pleasure like me in being alone and doing your creative process, then it works. It also can be a double-edged sword because you're like, okay, I'm ready to just like Netflix and chill. And I'm going to put my work over here for 2 days. And I just am okay with that sometimes. Like I see people who are like posting on social media every day and they're always have something new and they're always like launching this and they're always working on this. And I'm like, well, I should be like that. And it's like, well, what is the level of success that is important to me? My dog's reel of booping him on the nose has like 12,000 people looking at it. And I'm like, well, if that was 12,000 people looking at me, is that the success that I really want? You just have to weigh it.
Yeah, I agree. It can be very draining as an introvert to go out and do a show. I'm really good at one-on-one interactions, but when I'm in a big crowd of people, especially a crowd of people I don't know, it's very hard for me to listen to one conversation or understand like what are these people all talking about. It's just very, very overwhelming for me.
Yes.
It's funny because Kevin has helped me at some shows before, and he is a huge extrovert. He didn't understand where I was coming from for a while. If we would go out with like a group of his friends that I don't really know, it's hard for me to break into a group of already close people.
Yes.
So I get really quiet and I just sort of stand back because I'm like, oh, I'm going to say something dumb or I'm going to look stupid, you know. But then when he was helping me with the Maker's Market one time, at the end of it, because I was just floating around talking to everybody, and he was
You
like,
get in your zone.
Who are you? Yeah. He was like,
Same.
Who are you?
Well, Nevin is the same way. Like he has been to shows with me and it's like the same thing. Like if I'm in a big group and I'm trying to get to know people, I'm like the observer and I don't do great with like not real conversation, like fluff. I'm more of like let's get to the nitty gritty. Not everyone's comfortable with that most of the time. But when I get in my groove and I have my spiel, I mean, I'm sure you have your spiel. You know, this is what I make and this is how I do it. And you know how to manage if there's more than one person at your, you know, pulling at you, be like, I'll be right with you. Like you're in your 10 by 10 space.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm the same way.
So I wanted to ask you, what are some common questions you get about your products? And also, have you ever had any negative interactions or people saying rude things to you at shows? I know you sort of mentioned a little bit about, you know, people thinking it's like devils and stuff like that. But
yeah. So the common questions that I get about my products, the biggest one is like, what is an eye pillow? Like, what do I do with an eye pillow? So that's like the biggest question. And basically I just explain, you know, you can use it as is for like relaxation, sleep, insomnia, warm it up. This is my spiel that you would hear at a show. Warm it up for dry eye styes or muscle tension. My personal favorite, keep it in the freezer for headaches and migraines. So that's more of like an education. What is Reiki? When I will say like, part of my spiel is, oh, I infuse the crystals with Reiki. And I kind of gauge who I tell that to, because I have had people, when I say that it's infused with Reiki, you know, they give me looks and walk away. I've had people say, I remember distinctly, it was at one of the shows at Park City. It seems to happen a lot more out that way, as opposed to out where I live towards Philadelphia. They were interested in my tea steepers, which it's a tea ball with a crystal on the end. And, you know, people, sometimes they don't know what they are. And I'm like, oh, it's a tea steeper. Or, you know, sometimes people just have used it for divination as a pendulum. And I remember saying that to someone, and this girl looked me dead in the eye and she goes, well, I love Jesus, and walked away. And I just laughed because I was like, I'm pretty sure Jesus loves crystals. He, you know, his dad made them. Nothing that I said was about the devil. Like Reiki is not about the devil. Crystals are not about, it has nothing to do with religion. In fact, you know, Reiki and prayer aren't so far apart in reality. You know, there's a lot of people that do healing. It's all fundamentally under this umbrella. So that's where I get a lot of the weird looks or the pushback about like the crystals or the Reiki, or that it's more like woo woo, which is fine, because to each his own. You know, I want the people to find me who need me and who appreciate the products and, you know, will use them for their best selves. And that's, you know, why I'm in business. So that's a big one. I do get a lot where they'll just walk up and be like, what's the meaning of this stone? What's the meaning of this stone? What's the meaning of this stone? And I just don't even entertain that anymore. I just give my little spiel, like, close your eyes. What do you feel? Because a lot of the times the people who are asking me that, like, what's this one? What's this one? They're not ever purchasing from me. They're just spending a lot of my time. Another one I get is a lot of people are like, oh, your prices are so high. And I'm like, I have items that are $5 up to $65. And when people say that, I just usually don't reply. I just, you know, smile and nod, because they don't understand what goes into a handcrafted business. They don't understand that they're not just paying for that crystal. they're paying for the metal, they're paying for the time, they're paying for the chain, the clasp, the advertising, the fee for this booth, the bag that's going to go in there, the little card that tells you what that crystal means, my business card, all of that goes into pricing your items. And a lot of people just don't understand or value that. And that's okay. So when those people come up, I just smile and nod. And then the next person's going to come up and they're going to love everything and they're not going to bat an eye and they're going to grab what serves them. So there's that. And then I get a lot of unsolicited advice regarding my eye pillows.
Really?
Yeah, I think people think if you sew like one thing that you are a sewer and that you should make, I get well, do you make the big wraps and you should put straps on these eye pillows and maybe you should do this with these eye pillows. My response is I sew rectangles. I don't like to sew. My mom gave me her like basic Singer. She set the setting. She like cleaned it and oiled it for me over Christmas because I sew rectangles. And the reason that I make the eye pillows is because they correlate with my whole brand. I'm not trying to sell wraps or do these other things. So I think as a small business, and I don't know if you get it too, a lot of unsolicited advice on what you should be making as opposed to like, wow, it's really great. Look at all this stuff that is on your table right now that you do make. Do you get that?
I do get that. I think I talked about this before. The adult clothing protectors, I was like, okay, yeah, I could see that. So then I started making them and they actually do very well. But then there's some things I get and it's like, that's not even close to what I'm making. Like one thing was somebody told me I should start making it was like a thing that hangs on the door that you can put different things for different seasons, like made out of felt and with Velcro. They showed me a picture and I was like, the time it would take me to make something like that, it would just be too much. And I sew with cotton fabric. I would have to buy all different kinds of felt and there's no way like to make one of them. I mean, that would be fine to make if I would make it for a gift for somebody.
Like a custom order that if they want to put a 50% down deposit. And that's the other thing too, like you get requests for customs for things that you don't even make. And I've just learned to say no. I used to get people asking me, do I make jewelry with bullet casings all the time? And I'm like, no. And when I first started out back in the day, it would have been like, oh my gosh, it's a sale. I have to take that. I have to do that special order. And then it just ended up being like stress. So like finding that niche and taking the advice, like you said, like some ideas that people give you are very good. Like I had a friend that she loved my mandala stickers and she was like, I would love a magnet for the back of my car. And I was like, that is a great idea.
Yeah.
That's very little on my end. I just put the file into a magnet now.
Right.
So like some constructive criticism and ideas are very helpful. I find the majority are just not very educated and like telling me what I should make as a maker.
Yeah.
I just smile and nod.
I think people really underestimate how long it takes to make all of these things. And I think I've said before that just because you sew or you do one thing doesn't mean you know how to do all of that. So like there's different kinds of sewing, there's different kinds of jewelry making. So then, all right, you want to make this custom order for someone. Well, then you got to look up a pattern and you got to learn how to do it. And then that takes time. So yeah, it's for the most part, I think not worth it when people have these suggestions of things. I agree because I thought like that a lot too. Like, oh, it's a sale. Or if it's somebody I know, it's like, oh, you feel bad saying, no, I'm not going to make that.
I don't know about you, but like there's things that like I used to make when I first started. I used to make these like rings that like wrapped around your finger that I hand formed and stamped, and you could get like your kids' names on them or a mantra. And they were super popular. But after a certain time, I just got sick of making them and I didn't ever want to make them again. And I've had people reach out to me, oh, can you make me one of those rings that you made like 10 years ago? And I'm like, no. They're like, but I'll pay you. I'm like, no, it doesn't bring me joy to like make that product anymore.
Yeah.
Like I'm beyond making that now. Like I've moved forward. So yeah, it's always evolving with business. It's interesting.
It's interesting to see, usually people start out making one thing and then it evolves and you're making maybe something similar, but a different type of that thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that's what's so hard, I find sometimes with craft show applications where they want you to list every single thing that you're bringing and you're applying to a show in November in like February. Like I'm setting an application for a November show in February, listing everything I make
Right.
now. But by November, I could have added, XYZ products. So I've tried to use as general terms that specifically state what I make that allow me a little leeway if I need to, or I'll put like, I am always developing products. I'll make sure to let you know, and get approval,
Right.
If I add XYZ.
Some of them are strict and they say, like, if you don't have it written down on here, you can't bring it to the show, which I've never seen anybody actually check that, like walk around and check. But I mean, I guess they have the right to. I read on your website that the lavender for your eye pillows, it's grown by your mom.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. That's so cool.
I know. Well, so for my wedding, I didn't have like florals. I had dried lavender and then I had little like feathers and crystals. Shocker. So for my wedding, my mom grew all the lavender that we used in the centerpieces for the bundles and some things that we hung on the walls. And after the wedding, I had some that people didn't take with them. And I was teaching yoga and I was getting a pretty good following for some of like the more meditative practices that I teach, like yoga nidra and restorative yoga and yin yoga and the drum journeys. And so I decided to make the first eye pillows using the lavender from my wedding. So my friend Amy, who's a sewer, came and taught me how to do the rectangle and like, all the steps, cut it, press it, sew it, flip it, press it, like all the steps, which is why sewing is not my jam. I like more immediate success.
Mhm.
And we filled them with rice and lavender from my wedding. And I made 10 of them and they just kind of traveled with me from studio to studio and people really like them. It was a nice thing to be able to add to my products. So my mom's an amazing master gardener. She has a huge garden up in Perry County. She grows all kinds of stuff. And she just like along the one side of her house just has these huge lavender bushes. And so she lets all the pollinators do their thing because she's huge on butterflies, monarchs, and all the butterflies. She's made books about butterflies and all the pollinators. So she has a happy little ecosystem up there. And then once the season's over, she dries the lavender for me. And sometimes she'll shuck it for me. A lot of the times I just get a huge bag filled with dried lavender stalks, and then I just sit and shuck it into a big bowl. So I always say that they're like made with love because they're grown in such a nice place. It doesn't use any pesticides. It's organic. It's local in Pennsylvania. So it's a really nice thing to have. It helps me out too with the supply chain issues, but it's just nice. My mom's always been a good inspiration and a creative force. And so it's nice to be able to incorporate her passion for gardening and again with nature into something that I make that brings people so much joy. So that's where the lavender comes from.
That's so cool. I love that.
I think people also like to hear that too, that it's local and it's a nice story. It comes from your mother and who doesn't love that?
Yeah. You offer a variety of workshops and classes on your website. Mm-hmm. So tell me about those and how do you drive traffic to your website?
I don't get a whole lot of outside traffic to my website, which is something I would like to work more on. Luckily, prior to the pandemic, I had been teaching yoga and classes at like 4 or 5 different locations. So for a few years. So luckily, I was able to build a really nice following through that. So a lot of the people that I used to teach in person, they're all on my mailing list. I send out a monthly newsletter that has some like tips and tricks. Every month there's like a theme, like a health theme. Actually, last month was Reiki. Okay. Educated people about Reiki. And I kind of drive traffic that way with the newsletter to people who've already experienced what I'm offering in person. I find with my classes and with my products, I do better in person. Once you've met me in person and experienced it in person or seen the products in person, then that online builds. It's just kind of the nature, I think, of my products and my offerings that it's more of like an in-person thing. So luckily, I've had a following that I built through those previous studios and places that I taught so that when the pandemic hit, I was able to just kind of transition right into Zoom. So I was teaching, online class. People could just register through my website who'd already taken my classes at studios. I kept one of the classes. It was a 9:30 Friday yin class that I've taught for 5 or 6 years. I just recently let it go because I needed some space to do some other things. But I was able to just transition that. So the people who used to take my Friday class started coming to the one online. I've been very lucky to have a group of people that have been very committed to their journeys and also committed to what I'm offering. I think the community aspect is always a big thing, especially what my business is. Lately, I've actually, one of my clients has opened up a lovely shop in Chester Springs with a event space above. So now I've been able to return to some in-person. So along with my advertising on Instagram and Facebook and my newsletter, they're also advertising to their clientele and their newsletter. So that helps drive people then to their events in person and then also to my website with what I have going on there with the guided meditation recordings. I have a couple of recorded classes you can download. I have a bunch of meditations that I've recorded that you can just download, own, take whenever you want, along with the products. So that's the only thing about having your own website. You really do have to work more with driving the traffic as opposed to if you were using like an Etsy, but I left Etsy a long time ago. Even like the drive of people coming there, all the hoops that I would have to jump through for Etsy just aren't worth it. So
tell me more about how your newsletter works. How do you put that together?
So I do my newsletter through my website, which is Wix. I love Wix. I have a graphics background. I find Wix very user-friendly on the back end to kind of finagle anything that I've needed for my business. I've been able to put services. I've been able to put videos. I've been able to put audio recordings. I've been able to put products. With the Wix account that I have, I get 3 emails a month to my mailing list. And I used to write them randomly and I wasn't very good at it. And one of the things that I did last year that it was like the best thing I ever did is a friend of mine was looking for, she wanted to get into more like freelance writing. And she just had kind of randomly posted something on Facebook. And I sent her a message. I was like, hey, I would love for you to just write my newsletter. Like, this is what I'm looking for. So pretty much the last 2 years, in the beginning of the year, we talk about an outline and we do a theme for every month. So I know what's coming. So I can kind of link my products and services into the themes. And then she just sends me a quick outline. We make any edits. And then I just drop it into my format on Wix because they have templates. And I just use the same template for my newsletter. And I just change the title and I drop her in her thing. And then I change the photos and whatever I'm going to link, whatever I want to advertise. Usually it's upcoming events. Click to go to my website, see the events. And like, oh, okay. If we were talking about Reiki, I linked it to my animal Reiki services so that people could remember that I offer animal Reiki services. So that was the best thing I ever did because now I actually send them every month because I took something off my plate. I have a graphics background, so I do tend to try to do everything. I can write good things, but it takes me a long time. My train of thought is usually a lot more direct and people usually need more fluff. And it's just been so awesome for her to just send it to me and be like, this is great. Cause I don't like a lot of spam from people. So I find 3 emails enough for me to have that I don't have to upgrade for Wix. Cause I usually send a newsletter out like the 1st or 2nd of the month. If there's like an important event that's coming up that I want to like really focus on, that takes care of like the 2nd email. And if there's any like new products or something that I want to launch, that usually can fall into like the 3rd one. And I rarely use 3 emails a month. Usually I just send like 1. And Wix is nice because you can track, you can see who clicked on your links. You can see if you got revenue from that newsletter. You can see who unsubscribed. You can see who is actually opening it, who's clicking. So it's nice. I like it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Works for me.
So we talked a little bit about it's a little stressful to have a small business. There's a lot going on in the world right now. How do you deal with stress as a small business owner?
As a small business owner, as a woman, as a person on this planet? Well, one, definitely as a business owner, what we just talked about, you don't have to do everything, right? Play to your strengths. If you can afford it, outsource some things, barter, your friends and family have talents that maybe they're looking to explore. You never know in that regard. But again, just like you wouldn't want to do anything for free, don't just ask like your family and friends to do things for you for free unless, in my opinion, yes, there is the extent of help from family and friends, but if it's really benefiting your business, pay your contractors. But yeah, just outsourcing things to other people to take certain things off your plate, big stress reliever, in my opinion. Personally, for me, getting outside, going and walking my dog, snuggling with my dog. He's not a registered emotional support animal, but he probably should be. I don't know about onyx. Just grounding in nature. A lot of the times I'll put Rigby out and I'll put a blanket out and I'll just lay and get some vitamin D and just kind of breathe and listen to the trees and try to just ground and reconnect to the actual moment that I'm in and kind of stop the mind chatter, doing things that you really like and enjoy outside of your business, right? I don't know about you, but running a small business can take a lot of joy out of the actual creativity process because you get bogged down in a lot of admin that I personally am not a huge fan of. So doing something that is creative outside of your business that you don't have to sell, that there's like no pressure that someone has to buy it, I find as like a huge stress relief personally. Lately, I've been doing a lot more active yoga or aerobic exercise to like really turn my brain off so that I'm focusing on the next movement I'm doing. And I feel like I'm getting some rage out, like punching the air. So always moving your body. Meditation, grounding meditations, breath work is just a really easy way. Everybody breathes. So just stopping and actually like listening to your breath and taking a few deep breaths. I know we're going to do a little meditation a little later that we're going to do. It's a breath practice that anybody can do at any time to just reset the nervous system. Just doing things that make you happy, noticing what you're putting in your body. Like, what are you watching? What are you eating? I feel like those are all big things to reduce stress. And then definitely asking for help. Reflect with other people that have similar experiences. It just makes you feel less alone. You and I have had so many talks over the past couple of weeks that just knowing that we're experiencing the same things can feel a little less stressful.
Yeah, I know. The same. I feel like people think if they're not doing something 24/7, they're like wasting their time. And running a small business, it's a lot of work. And I have another job outside of that. That job can be pretty demanding. I'm an X-ray tech. It can be pretty busy. And, we've had people quit. So I've been filling in a lot. So it makes it a lot harder to find time, to sew and for my small business. But you have to take a break sometimes, like if I'm working multiple 10-hour shifts, 11-hour shifts a week. And, I wake up the next day and it's Saturday and I was planning on sewing. Sometimes I'll just sit there and I'm like, I just need a break today. And I'll do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. You need to just do what's best for you and try to not worry that it may put you a little behind. I don't know. I am all for that. If you want to take a day and just sit on the couch and binge watch stupid TV shows, go for it,
Exactly. Well, we live in such a culture that it is perpetuated by go, 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 go. And doing nothing is considered lazy, but it's not. Like you said, if you wake up and you're really not feeling it and you push yourself to do it, I don't know about you, but when I do things like that and I'm pushing myself to do it, the product is not as good as if I was really wholeheartedly in it. So, and especially for me, if I'm like making people's jewelry or products with the intention of their healing, if I'm in a shitty ass mood and I don't feel like making it, forcing myself to make their necklace is just going to transfer, in my belief, it's just going to translate into the product. Ultimately, that doesn't serve me either. So yeah, definitely rest is underrated in our culture and our society. And more people need to rest, more people need to breathe and move their bodies and really become more attuned to their bodies and their breath and their selves, because we're just so programmed to move through society. So it's good to pause. You find the inspiration in the pause.
So I'll do that. And then there is a really cute little forest that's not too far from my house. And everything feels so peaceful there. I just love it. So Joey and I, and now Onyx, I'll bring her when she gets a little older. It's important to get out and just have a mental health day for sure.
I agree. Go hug a tree. Trees are so receptive. Like you could just lay there and just like imagine your stress, just like being taken down into the roots to be nourished by the amazing fungi system that connects all the trees. There's so much with nature that's so healing. So if you're stressed, get outside, breathe, at least something.
You mentioned about doing a very short guided meditation.
Sure.
Would you like to do that now?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
So you'll just need to find a comfortable seat. For those that are listening, Dana, you're already seated, which is perfection. So if your feet are on the ground, you just want to ground the feet, close the eyes. Maybe you roll your shoulders up to the ears and down the back of the body. Notice Any tension that you might be holding in your forehead, smoothing out the forehead. Letting the eyes become heavy. Softening the cheeks. Relaxing the jaw, parting the teeth, the lips. And just take a moment, take a big breath in through the nose. And as you exhale, open the mouth, sigh it out. Feel the relaxation in the body with the breath as you exhale. Give yourself 2 more breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. And then just allow the breath to flow naturally, watching as it moves in through the nose, travels down into the lungs, expanding the center of the body. And watch as you exhale, watch what softens with that exhale. And being gentle with yourself if you notice that you're distracted by thoughts or feelings or things to do or places to go. Allow yourself to just notice that you're watching the thoughts and then invite them to float away as you return your attention to your breath. Let the breath be the anchor. Every time your mind floats away to a thought or a feeling, return to the breath. You might even imagine as you exhale that you're blowing those thoughts away like they're in a bubble, floating, drifting. And then bring to your mind the image of a square. And let your attention rest at the bottom left corner of that square. And as you inhale to the count of 3, I want you to move your attention up to the top left corner. So inhale up the left side. 1, 2, 3. Hold your breath in as you travel across the top of the square for 3. And then exhale down the right side of the square for 3. Hold your body empty for the count of 3 along the bottom of the square. So we're just moving around that square, inhaling up, count to 3. Hold the breath at the top for 3. Exhale for 3. And hold yourself empty as you come across the bottom. Just find this breath, this square breath, inhaling, holding, exhaling, holding. And you might notice your count increases. Maybe you're inhaling to 4, holding for 4. Just be with your breath along this square here. What happens in the pauses, in the space between the breath when you're holding yourself full and empty? Let's take 3 more trips around our square, counting however your breath dictates. And once you've traveled around your square for the 3rd time, let go of any effort in the breath. Just return to your natural rhythm. Maybe you set an intention or a mantra or a purpose for the rest of your day. Could be a single word. It could be a phrase that you just repeat to yourself to return to the moment when the mind begins to wander. It could be as simple as, I am present in this moment. I am worthy. I am powerful. I choose love. Whatever it is, let that phrase settle into your heart. And just take the next 3 breaths, repeating that intention as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Take one more full breath in through the nose, sigh it out through the mouth. Let it be a big one. Don't be scared of your voice here. And then when you're ready, just start to flutter the eyes open, letting the images of the room come to you.
That was awesome.
How do you feel?
Good. I feel super relaxed.
Say 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Turn your mind off. Did you notice when you were doing the square breath, you didn't have any other time to think about anything else other than what you were doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was cool. I could see it too. I could see the little line. I could feel my
And
eyes
some
go
people
around.
see, some people sense, like, everybody visualizes differently. Some people actually see images. Some people sense that image. Some people are more auditory. So if you were doing that meditation and you didn't see a square, that's okay. You're still awesome. Just breathe.
Very cool. Thank you so much for that.
My pleasure.
Well, we are nearing the end of the podcast.
Oh, no.
And as you know, I like to end every podcast with a random fact. So do you have your random fact for me?
I do. So I got a random fact about the practice of yoga nidra, which is, it's also called yogic sleep. And yoga nidra is a practice that you can do lying down. You need no movement. You need no props. You literally just lie down and listen to a meditation. And there have been studies that show that 1 hour of yoga nidra practice can equal 3 to 4 hours of deep sleep.
Wow.
And yoga nidra is a practice that you don't sleep. I mean, you can take yoga nidra to fall asleep, but the purpose is to find that space. Most of us have sensed it, like right before our alarm goes off or right before we're about to go to sleep, that space right between awake and asleep. And it has just been shown to recalibrate our brain waves so much that 1 hour of yoga nidra can give you 3 to 4 hours of restful rejuvenation, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is really cool. Everyone should look into that for sure.
Well, I do have some yoga nidras on my website that you can download to purchase. And I do have some upcoming events in person that are also on my website that you can practice yoga nidra live or some drum journeys. So there's all kinds of meditations on my website, little ones that you can ease into that are a couple minutes, like the one that we did. There's some that are a little longer. There's a couple that are hour long. There's a whole solar eclipse workshop on there if you want to dive into your shadow self. So there's all kinds of stuff just to get started. And don't be scared with meditation. If you can breathe, then you can meditate. It's become quite a circus out there with all the things. So give yourself a moment to just breathe.
Cool. What is your website?
Woodlandawakening.com.
Woodland Awakening. Okay, everyone check it out. If you want more meditation, you can check it out.
Yeah, chill out.
All right. Well, that is the end of the show. Thank you so much for spending your morning with me.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a blast.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll be seeing each other around.
For sure. Yeah. I'll have to check what you're doing and request to be near each other again.
Yeah, definitely.
It's always good to have a booth buddy.
Yes, definitely. All right. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Handmade with Heart podcast. Don't forget to follow Erica at Woodland Awakening and me at Scrappy Stitch and the Handmade with Heart podcast.